Possession crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. It's over the bar. Oh, holy Moses.
Hello, welcome to the RTE GAA Podcast on this Monday. Hope you are all keeping well, joined by Rory O'Neill, John Fogarty of the Irish Examiner, and Jackie Tyrrell. How are we all doing, lads?
Good, Mike.
Good, Mikey.
Good, Mikey.
Jackie, how was your weekend? Did you get up to much on Saturday evening?
Watching that game, Mikey, and licking my wounds after and that. But listen, it was. I suppose we can have no qualms. The better team won. I thought Wexford were magnificent. No one really seen that performance coming, considering previous performances of Wexford. But they came to Kilkenny. They had a plan, but essentially they just seemed to want it a bit more than Kilkenny. They fought in droves. They made some kind of tactical moves that really worked for them. But essentially, their big players came to the table. You think of Liam Ryan down the middle. You think of Dee O'Keefe. You think of Lee Chin. I thought Damien Rick was outstanding. And I just thought that those 3-4 players were the difference, really. And you look at Kilkenny, some of Kilkenny's big players didn't really perform, which is really worrying. And we're at the end of a round robin, and really, probably when you look at it, we had 2 tough tests, and we didn't come through really, with all due respect to the other 3 teams, and that is worrying going into a Leinster final.
Yeah, it is indeed. Anyway, look, we'll come back to that in a few minutes, because I want to talk more about that game and yesterday's whatever the hell that was in Munster. But Jackie, if you don't mind, myself, Rory and John are just going to talk about Gaelic football here for a minute. I'm not sure if you're aware, but there is actually an All-Ireland Football Championship. It's a bit like the hurling, but it's less manly and heroic, and they still have qualifiers. So the first draw was just on this morning, so I just want to ask the lads about that for a second. So you can go back to licking your wounds there. For those of you who may not have heard, the 4 Division 1 teams in the round 1 qualifiers have been drawn against each other. Mayo and Monaghan to meet for the first time ever in the championship, strangely. And then you've also got Armagh v Tyrone, which is kind of the pick of the matches. Clare v Meath and Cork v Louth. John, obviously there's 2 ties that stand out there, but I suppose the first thing you think is that like two teams with their eyes perhaps on a semi-final spot at least are going to be going out in the first round of the qualifiers.
That's it, Mikey. We all thought that Armagh Tyrone was looking at it. It was going to be the pick, and it certainly is the pick. And the fact that I see this morning already people tweeting that Armagh will not be giving up home advantage. Why should they? Completely understandable, especially against their neighbours like that. But it is it's a bit surreal in a way that we're going to lose these teams too. We're talking, or we will be talking about Tipperary and Waterford and Dublin leaving the championship so early in the hurling championship. But now we're going to see 2 very big teams going out in the first weekend in June, which is huge. And there could be an argument made to say that it will value the championship in the sense that Armagh could be gone after 2 games, Tyrone after 3. That's the way it's going. Mayo after 2, Monaghan after 3. Those are scary statistics. Like I genuinely believe we have a better football championship structure coming to us next year. It's not perfect in any shape or form, but I do believe it's a case of slowly catch a monkey, and we're moving towards something better. But at this moment in time, there's an argument to be made that the qualifiers, certainly the round 1 of the qualifiers, are going to be better than round 2 of the qualifiers, where we're going to bring in the provincial finalists. And let's be honest, Limerick, this Munster final is their All-Ireland final for them. But I would have concerns that round 2 could be a bit of a damn squib compared to this round 1.
Yeah, I suppose, Rory, after the Charlton Cup kind of made us all kind of shrug our shoulders a bit, this is the yin to the yang. Like, the Charlton Cup was full of Division 3 and 4 teams because that's how it's been designed. So this was always going to happen. You were going to get some matches in this qualifying round that were going to be tasty. But you could make the argument that they might be a little bit too tasty.
I think it's good for some teams, a disaster for the football championship to see 2 big teams potentially gone. Well, not potentially, they will be gone. Would it have been
Now, look, it's only for this year. I don't think that, but it will still come into play next year. Would it have been the worst thing to see that draw? To put the 4 top seeds in one poll and the 4, just like a lot of organizations and sports governing bodies will design their competitions to try and make sure that the better teams get to the latter stages, because that's ultimately what you want. You don't want, like what you're looking at now potentially down the line here is one of the quarterfinals being severely compromised. And that's damaging for football, given the year that we're having currently, where a lot of the provincial championships have been fairly nondescript. So I think it's
explain that now, Rory. Why will one of them be severely compromised?
Well, like if for instance Cork managed to stumble their way into a quarter final, and or a team that's of a weaker standing managed to make it to a quarter final and ended up getting absolutely hosed. I think that's the fear, and I think look, people will shout you down for saying, "Oh, seeding, that's elitist," but I mean, look, it's the elite level that we're talking about here. Mm-hmm. This is the elite level of GAA, so I wouldn't have seen anything particularly wrong with doing it like that. But yeah, look, it'll make for a very interesting round one of the qualifiers, as John said. You'd just be worried that it's going to take something from the competition.
I think it's a fair point that Rory's making, Mikey, because let's be honest with you, with the league placings determining your position in the Sam Maguire Cup or the Tailteann Cup next season, that is, as far as I'm concerned, seeding. So if it had been brought in for this year, it wouldn't have been such a bad thing, I think, and would have generated excitement as the championship goes along. Instead, now we have 2 huge games, one which mightn't be on TV. Rory might correct me on that. I think we, obviously not all 4 games are going to be on TV.
2 of them will, John.
2 of them, that's something at least. And we know the 2 that, let's be honest, we know the 2 that are going to be on TV.
Yeah.
Okay. And a bad weekend for Waterford GAA, just to mention, they lost to Wicklow and Wexford lost to Offaly. So in the first Tailteann Cup game, so those 2 are going to meet now next weekend in the first round proper. So just that's to round off our football coverage.
Offaly rising again from a low base. So Jackie, let's start with Waterford, because Wexford Kilkenny was the story of Saturday, but in some ways Waterford is the story of the championship thus far, because it's hard to look away from the second favourites for the All-Ireland being dumped out in like, I know the result in the end was irrelevant because Cork got the job done, but to lose by 12 points in a do or die match for such a like well thought of team, it's astonishing. And I don't know, I guess you were never in this position because the round robin throws this up. I guess there could be some kind of a mental issue where you're going into a game, a championship hurling match, knowing that a win may not be enough for you, and that may mess with the head. I'm not saying that's an excuse, but it's kind of an unusual quirk of the round robin which may have had an influence.
Yeah, it's big news. Like, Waterford after the league final were positioned probably the best team in the country to take on this Limerick team, and rightly so. They deserved it, an outstanding league final. But since then, the trend of them has gone down. They had a patchy performance against Tipperary, and since then it's been gone from bad to worse. Looking in from the inside, I'd have 2 trail of thought. One, did they peak too soon in the year? Was the league final as good as it got for that team and they struggled? And you look through the team and the main players in that league, the Stephen Bennett's of it, like, he'd an outstanding league. He hasn't hit a ball really since then. He's a really, really good player. We've seen in previous championships how good this guy, he's an all-star. Why is that? Well, you would ask the question, why did he go from that to being so poor? He was probably one of the foreign players in the country. So maybe the peak too early in the year. The second thing is, there's just something in the psychology of this team when it comes to the round robin that they're just not able to manage it. I don't know if it's the week on, week off. You look at the record since the round robin, and it's been under different managers, but for some reason, they just can't seem to get their head around it. I don't know if they're not able to manage the load, if they're not able to kind of park a performance and move on from it, but they've just continuously struggled, because Liam Cahill is a really good manager. We know that. He's brought this team to an All-Ireland. He's brought them to numerous Munster titles. They've they've quality within the team, but for some reason they have just fallen flat when they've come to the championship.
It's 1 win in 12 round robin matches now. I make it. Their win over Tipperary. Yeah,
10 defeats. Like that's like it's so hard to put your finger on it, but that's just so alarming for Waterford hurling. Particularly if you said they had a bad management or there was indiscipline within the squad or they just weren't pulling together. But looking in from the outside, they're all running together. But for some reason, something happened. You look at Jamie Barron getting taken off the weekend, throwing the hurling the helmet. That's not good. You look at maybe Ozzy maybe getting sent off and he shouldn't have. I don't think they're the main reasons, but there's something not right with this team. There's something not right with this group when it comes to the round robin. On any given day, they could beat anyone, but consistently, they can't back up one performance after another, and it's just been a downward trend since the league final.
Yeah, get on to the league in a minute, John, because if we have concerns about the structures of the football championship, I think our alarm bells are going to be ringing about the hurling league now, because I just can't see the top teams batting an eyelid at it next year, but we'll come to that in a minute. But on Waterford, John Milan was on Radio 1 last night, and he was yesterday evening, and he was questioning how the team was leaked during the week, which I wasn't aware of, but obviously people in Waterford were very well aware of, and you working for the paper, I'm sure you were very well aware of it. He was wondering about that and what that says about the camp, and like obviously the morale wasn't where it needed to be yesterday. There's no getting around that, and that is really surprising when you consider just how well thought of Liam Cahill is as a manager. We've spoken about him here. He's not an arm around the shoulder type of guy. He's a very he's an army drill sergeant kind of a manager, but players seem to respond to him. But it's just the arse fell out of it in the last 2 games. Something's gone wrong.
Yeah, when they won the league, what was most impressive, it was like, Jackie's Kilkenny winning the league. There was no celebrations or anything like that, Mikey. It just felt like it was, yes, we won a league, let's move on now. And they had parked it. It seemed as if they had parked it that night, but it was an extremely heavy schedule when you consider what they went through in that league. The follow on into the start of the championship, beating Tipperary, which was a big game for them. Obviously, Liam Cahill as well. I got the sense that they were overtrained. Now again, Liam Cahill and Mikey Beavens, they make no apologies for running lads hard, but I thought after the Limerick game, and they gave a good account of themselves in the Limerick game. I genuinely believe that, as much as it was another defeat to Kylie's Limerick, but I thought that would have been an opportunity for them to have a break of at least a week and then come back and give it 2 weeks hard. My understanding, talking to people before the Cork game in Walsh Park, is that that's not what happened. They continued to hit it hard, and we saw a flatness, an incredible flatness in that defeat. And again, yesterday, you saw it again. There was just flatness, and nothing like this high octane, this high energy Waterford group that we have come to know and respect. Waterford made a huge deal, Mikey, about Liam Cahill. They knew that he was being courted by his own county. The chairman went to his house, spoke to him about, pleaded with him to stay, and he stayed. And now it seems as if it is all fallen apart, and there's going to be a huge fallout from this. There's questions last night, talking to people on the drive home from Thurles. There was people mentioning, has he lost the dressing room in a way? Now that's a huge thing to say, but there's going to be a major fallout because there's huge expectations, and we were guilty of it ourselves. We were mentioning trilogies. I was mentioning a trilogy that the game in the Gaelic grounds a few weeks ago was going to be part 1 of 3. Now it looks like Limerick Clare could be part 1 of 3, but we won't put that on Clare just yet.
Yeah, don't curse the poor banner now as well, John. Rory, it was just such an odd way for the Munster Championship to play out, and I, like most people, was doing my best to watch both matches for the first half. To be honest with you, by the second half, I was trying my best to watch the Premier League matches because that was actually dramatic. Whereas, because the hurling was just Tipperary. I think we're kind of not in the same situation as Waterford at all. But for the 2 matches to be such one-way affairs, and God, we loved the round robin, and you and I were texting on Saturday night saying God bless the round robin for the drama it gave us in Leinster. But this year in Munster, it just fell flat, which I suppose is what can happen with a round robin. It's it's the nature of it.
I think, to go back to your original point, I think the real disappointment is Waterford, knowing that they were taking on a week, or I wouldn't say weekend, because I think Clare finished top of this group. People need to remember that. Like, Clare actually finished top dog in Munster. Like, they what did they end up with, 7 points and a fantastic scoring average. So I think that was just like for them to, and they're well within their rights to play, to leave Tony Kelly and John Conlon off the team. But so you're kind of saying to yourself, like, it's a good opportunity for Waterford at least to do their job anyway and get their job. I think the whole thing around the team being leaked, that's a bit of a ruse for me. I mean, so what if the team was leaked? Who cares? Like, I mean, you don't have to start that team anyway. And as we know, they're well able to make changes in advance of it. And there's way too much store put on, oh, you can't have the team. Like, I mean, rugby is a sport that is analyzed and detailed down to the minutiae, and they announce their teams well in advance. And this is a professional sport where they pour over every single bit of video that they can get. There's a bit like that. I wouldn't pay too much credence to that as being.
I don't think Milan was saying that it had an impact on the result. I think he means it's just a bad sign that it's coming out.
Symptomatic of maybe, the spirit that might have existed in there. Like, but look, Jackie mentioned their record: 10 defeats, one draw and one win. It's just you just don't know. I mean, I think from Liam Cahill's perspective, the really big question now is, does he continue with this team? I mean, he has had a good innings, it should be said. He's won a National League. They don't win many. He's won a national trophy. He's taken them to an All-Ireland final, took them to a Munster final, contested semi-finals, brilliant victory over Kilkenny after they were 7 or 8 or 9 points down in the COVID championships, which they don't, Jack, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but Waterford don't beat Kilkenny that often in the championship, I would suggest. So I think he has had, if you were to take his block of work as a whole, I think he's been a huge success. Just, I don't know what prick has pinged into the balloon here to just fizzle all the air out of it. It's, who knows? I mean, it's just bizarre. I think John could make a fair point in that. Did they look a bit, lackadaisical as a result of maybe being overtrained? But you see, like, you're only speculating on that, looking from the outside in. It's very, very hard to understand it.
I would suggest, Jackie, he stays on for one more year, but he does a Limerick on it, and this is going to be a problem, I think, next spring. I can't see Cork, Wexford, Waterford, or any team who took a good cut at the league this year.
I don't think any team will take the league seriously.
They're not going to repeat that quote-unquote mistake, Jackie, are they?
Doesn't look like it. You look at the learnings from this year. Anyone that we'd say underperformed in the league is having a stellar championship, and anyone that we say performed or maybe overperformed is after falling flat in their place outside of Wexford, really, who are probably in a really good position now. So the league is the league, and sometimes we get caught up in talking about it and we change it every couple of years. I see the league as a league. It can be whatever you want. It can be, you can put it as much into it as you want, or you can put as little into it as you want. Ultimately, it is and always has been about the championship. And yeah, we will give lip service to, we'll give it the right due respect, and we'll put the right teams out and things like that. But ultimately, the round robin is too competitive, is too intense not to treat it with the utmost respect and to hold back a small bit. And that's what it is, and people just need to accept it and get on with it. That there's going to be a bit of shadow boxing, and that's kind of part of it. Like, you're going to be next year in the league going, well, we don't really know where they're at because we don't know how hard they're going. And ultimately, until you've come to the first round, the round robin, that's when everything will be.
You won a fair few leagues. I think I looked it up on your Wikipedia page one of the last days, Jackie, because you didn't actually know. I think you've between 4 and 6. I can't remember exactly, but like Brian Cody used to try and win it. Do you think there's been a change in Brian Cody's approach since round robin came in?
It was different then, Mikey. There was six weeks the championship. You went back and you played as a club for a couple of weeks.
That's another key point, Jackie, by the way.
Lads used to go off on warm summer training and all that kind. You come back, you play a first round, and then you might play for another 3 weeks. So you could go as hard as you wanted back in the league. So I would say Brian, he'll never front up and say it, but I'd say you'd have to, if you were anyway good of a manager and you're looking at the way the year is mapped out, you would have to hold back in the league. You trying to get the balance of getting your new guys in, getting your older guys some match fitness and that, and then be ready for the round robin. And Brian will be like that, like everyone else. Now, there is other teams that probably hold back a bit more and aren't too bothered with it, and that's fine for them. That's the way they go about it.
Yeah.
And Mikey, just one other point. Sorry, John. I think like you, because you mentioned there, maybe if he were to stay on, and I kind of hope he does as well. And the good thing is, because if you do discard the league, you have a whole year. You have a whole year to plan your championship 2023. That's a long time. You can get a lot done in 12 months.
You'll give them at least 3 weeks off now before they go back training.
The GAA know that the league has to change. They know, if not the format, then certainly the scheduling of it, because a Division 1 final 2 weeks out from a start of the Leinster and the Munster Championships is just not on. John Cahill said it at Christmas. It was two things that alarmed him. The quick turnaround from the league provincial championships, and we saw the proof of the pudding. Limerick didn't take the league at all serious. And the other concern, which is another matter for the Munster final, is the 4-week difference from a Munster final to an All-Ireland semi-final, which is obviously the same for the Leinster guys on the Saturday night before.
Yeah, same as it's ever been. Okay, well, look, I think we'll leave it at that for Munster, because like the game's so bare. It's standing up to any analysis.
Sorry, Mikey,
I will say one thing.
I think the biggest news in the GAA world at the minute, and hasn't been called out, is the performance of Brian Lohan in Clare. It's been absolutely unbelievable. To think where this team was, to think where they are now, to think that they can play Waterford in their last round robin game. Yeah, they hadn't a whole lot to play for. Waterford were fighting for their lives. Rest Tony Kelly, along with John Conn and some key guys, and put him to the performance of this Clare team, and Brian Lohan in particular, has to be called out as absolutely unbelievable. Like the team he has now, how he's got Tony Kelly back to being consistently the best hurler in the country. How
Peter Duggan playing well, Shane O'Donnell playing well after being away for the game.
To watch. Yeah, but it's a supporting cast of Rory Hayes, Cotton Malone, Conor Cleary, Ryan Taylor. That's what the biggest change. He's got those guys to be really, really good hurlers, hugely competitive, and massive cogs in this Clare machine that could potentially really, I think they are All-Ireland contenders now.
Me too, I do as well. And I tickets went on sale for the Munster Hurling final this morning, and I guarantee you, west of the Shannon, they will be flying out like hotcakes.
Yeah, Shane Dowling flat to the mat this morning.
There's a manager, Mikey Lohan, who has certainly been liberated after COVID. He had 2 COVID seasons, and you can see now that he's really putting his mark on the team. And they'll absolutely give it to Limerick. But just on a final note about the Munster Championship, I know Pádraig Maher and Noel McGrath mentioned it recently about how poor the Tipperary supporters were. Their showing yesterday in Thurles was pathetic, to be honest with you, Mikey. I know Tipperary's chances of going through yesterday were slim, nearly none. But to be outnumbered like they were by a Cork team who themselves didn't show up in great numbers to Walsh Park the previous week was hugely disappointing. Tip is a very ambitious county at the moment in terms of what they're doing off the field. Sponsorship of Semple Stadium, a new shirt sponsor. They have a lot of ambition there. I'm wondering if it is being replicated in the setup itself. Colm Bonnar, he was dejected yesterday. I've never seen a man as dispirited after a defeat like that. And obviously Tipper aren't going to make any sort of movement on anything, whether it's to give Colm the thumbs up for next year or to bring in somebody else before this Kerry situation is all sorted. But the Tipperary support was just abysmal, and I think they let their team down. They'll say that their team let them down. I think they let their team down in the last few games big time.
What was the attendance, John, and what do you think the split was?
It was, well, I think there was more Limerick supporters and Kilkenny supporters for the under 20 final than there were Tipperary, but Cork, I'd say, outnumbered them 3, if not 4-1. It was hugely disappointing for them.
You could tell by the reaction of the crowd when the two teams teams came out onto the field. The home team came out to a whimper, and the away team came out to a big, massive roar.
Yeah.
Oh God. Well, if they're making moves off the field financially and they're not too worried about their home support,
could be a couple of Ed Sheeran concerts in Semple Stadium next summer, I'd say.
Bring back the trip to tape.
All right. Well, John,
there's plenty of time for it now.
Yeah. So John mentioned it there. So we might as well look at that. There was a bit of drama, Jackie, in Joe McDonagh the weekend. On Saturday, Carlow got the result they needed against Offaly, and Antrim. Kerry got the result against Antrim, so they went through to the final. So it is a Antrim v Kerry final. The quirk here is if Antrim, who will be favourites, do win, Laois are relegated from the Leinster Hurling Championship, and if Kerry win, Tipperary are not relegated. They have a playoff against Kerry. So this is our chance to put on our Leinster hats and have a good whinge, Jackie.
Yeah, so there was huge drama in the final weekend of the Joe McDonagh in what is a really great competition. Like the performance of Carlow was massive. Kerry getting the win against Antrim, that was a big performance then. But yeah, look, there's definitely a double standard there. How Kerry would, if they win the Joe McDonagh, would have to play Tip in a playoff, and Antrim would just go straight into the Leinster Championship. It doesn't make sense. I don't know who came up with the rule, but it's just a complete double standard. I don't know why that would be the case for a competition that you're trying to promote and drive, that if you do win it, you still have to play a playoff if you're Kerry. So they just need to look at that and change it. Unfortunately for Kerry, if they do win, it's in play for this year. And it'll probably just, if they did win, beat Antrim, it would just leave a sour taste in their mouth if they were beaten by Tipperary. Then that's, essentially they're not really awarded outside of winning the Joe McDonagh. There's no progression level for them, and that's what we need in hurling. We need to be promoting and giving our weaker teams a chance to get up to the Joe or to the Lee McCarthy and test themselves to get the best and try and make the next step on them.
On the flip side, John, it would be another day out for the Tipperary supporters.
Exactly, a neutral venue in Kerry, so it'll probably be Limerick. But
Parky Queeve is back in action, John. We look after you.
well, to quote Eamon Dunphy, and to answer Jackie Tyrrell's question, I know who said that, in the sense of I know who brought this protectionism in, and it was Cork. Cork led the way. Rory, sorry.
It was, yeah.
They felt that Munster was a superior championship. I would maintain that too, but I completely agree with where Jackie's coming from. I think it's very unfair on Kerry. Look at it this way. McDonagh Cup final, they win that. I do think Antrim will win it. Antrim were resting players at the weekend. They brought them on obviously at the end, but I do think Antrim will win that game. But just say Kerry win it. The following weekend they're out in the preliminary quarter final
against Cork.
Against Wexford. Cork play Antrim. Sorry, apologies if they win. You're right.
Yeah. So Kerry could be in a situation, John, where they could play Cork the following week and Tipperary the week after.
That's exactly it. 3 games in a row. And by the time they play Tipperary, they'll be flogged. So I think and it backs up Jackie's point, it's extremely unfair. Something has to be adjusted there. Kerry are making good moves. Malumphey, he got rid of a couple of players down there. There was a bit of a criticism down there. They're a very strong club structure down there in North Kerry. He ruffled a few feathers, but they've been very happy with what himself and Pat Bennett are doing there at the moment. But incredibly unfair, and it has to be adjusted in some shape or form to allow Kerry, not, they have to double qualify. It's not fair like that, especially if it was for Antrim, they're straight in if they win on Saturday week in Croke Park.
On the plus side, Mikey, it would give a Cork team the opportunity to go down to Killarney and get a win for the first time since World War II.
Rory, I think they'd bring it to Tralee.
Yeah, they might.
John, you do disagree with this, but you were saying before we started recording that you do think there may be a play the GAA could make to address the imbalance between the provinces.
I do, in a sense, because we mentioned John Milan earlier on. John has made this point before. I think he made it pre-pandemic, that there is an easier running away for a Leinster team to into the All-Ireland series, or certainly into the All-Ireland semi-finals. Listen, I know, and we'll be talking about it shortly, I know Brian Cody certainly isn't happy about qualifying for a Leinster final, having lost twice. But there's opportunities where they can trial players and develop players. It's almost like a league for them. There's no room for comfort or any shape or form in the Munster Championship. It is far too competitive in a way. And I think Listen, they're very happy. I know the Munster Council are very happy because the gate receipts are very strong, especially when they were thinking that the Tipperary Cork game, let's be honest, the Kilkenny Limerick under 20 final was being billed bigger than the Tipperary Cork game before Cork did what they did and ensured that there was so much so much on the line going into the final round. But I do think it's too strong. Sooner or later, I love the Munster Championship. I love the latter stages of the Leinster Championship. I can't say I'm a huge fan when I'm seeing tankings. Westmeath, Wexford being the outlier there, obviously. But I think we will see sooner or later an amalgamation of the two, as strong and as protectionist as a lot of the people in Munster are about the provincial championship.
So you think there'll be an open draw in the All-Ireland Championship?
Eventually I do, maybe before the end of this decade. But for now, like I would make the argument that I genuinely, and don't get me wrong, Tipperary do not deserve to go through in any shape or form. But I really do believe that there should be an extra spot given to the Munster teams to go through. When you think about the likes of Galway, Kilkenny, Wexford, Dublin, they have 2 games there where they can rest players. Munster don't.
I wouldn't advise resting players against Westmeath myself, but Jackie, what do you think of that?
It's a fair point John makes. I do accept that Munster is an awful lot more competitive, and maybe this is a kind of a blasé comment of mine, but Leinster and Munster, that's just the dynamic of it. One is more competitive than the other. Is it fair? Possibly not. But
life isn't fair. Life isn't fair, Jackie.
True, but you look at other sports. You look at the NFL, the AFC, and the NFC. The NFC is traditionally always the stronger division. I think you can use it to your advantage. If you do come out of that division, if you do come out in the top 3 of Munster, by God, you're going to be tested. You look at Kilkenny now, maybe even Wexford to a point of view. Probably Kilkenny don't know where they are going into a Leinster final. Yeah. So that's a perceived, it's a negative side from it. They had 2 games where they possibly, and I wouldn't say a rest. They could definitely rotate their squad. They didn't rest 15 lads. They probably rest, maybe 4 or 5 lads, like Wexford did. So I accept this point, but I don't know what you would like. I do see what you could do about it, but I just think it is what it is, and we can get caught up in that. Ultimately, are we going to get the best 4 teams in All-Ireland semi-final? Yeah. Will the All-Ireland winners be the right team? Yeah. Is there little intricacies along the way that probably are a little unbalanced? Yeah, but I don't think you need to go messing with them if you want to retain the provincial championships, which I think there still is strong enough appetite to retain.
I think if we're to get a surprise, say, Wexford appearance in the last 4, I have a way to do it. I think Wexford should make a benevolent gift to the Joe McDonagh Cup losers, and then whoever they play, the Munster final losers. So, just blame it on a jersey clash, colour clash or something, and they should buy, let's say, Kerry and Clare a new set of alternative jerseys. Black and amber, striped. And Wexford could just play against Kilkenny jerseys every week, and I think we'd be sorted.
Listen, I know fair is fair. They were absolutely outstanding from the very get-go. I was watching the match and I was saying to myself, "Oh, this is a game. This is a game here." And they were absolutely outstanding. I think we were on this, was it last week, Jackie? And you made the point in relation to Cork is that why did we have to wait until round 3 to actually see the real Cork? I think you could nearly say the same about Wexford to a certain extent, in that I think we saw the real Wexford on Saturday night, and it's just about replicating that each day that they go out. I think they, like Jackie mentioned it, right up through the middle.
A fit leach in is a huge part.
Massive. But they still have, they have brilliant spine to the team. I thought Rory O'Connor, he had a couple of bad wides in that first half, but kept plugging away. I mean, he was on arguably one of the best cornerbacks in the game. So he
won a fair few frees too,
and won a lot of frees, right? And he and just for my mind, to go into Nowlan Park and you're basically, your season's on the line, and for them to pull out the performance that they did, I think speaks volumes for them. And I think they're right back in this championship mix. They'll be a tricky opponent for whoever they end up meeting in the quarterfinal, which you would assume they will be getting to, because they obviously play the defeated Joe McDonagh team, which, look, however hard it is to pick yourself up after winning the Joe McDonagh, it's a hell of a lot harder when you've been beaten in the final to have to go up and play Wexford the following week. So, like, Wexford are going to have a say yet. I mean, I picked them at the start of the championship to get to the Leinster final. Had they not slipped up against Westmeath, that's where they'd be this morning. And if they were going in there against Galway, you'd give them every chance.
Yeah. I wonder, Jackie, do they have I wouldn't call it a complex, and it's not just Kilkenny, but is there a risk Wexford are one of these teams who play to the level of their opponent? Which is quite a common complaint, I think, with teams who are kind of not at the top level. They'll match the team they're playing, which unfortunately, when you're playing lesser opponents, is a bad thing.
It's a fair question, but I'd like to get the sense from him after that performance that there's a leadership group there with Lee Chin, Liam Ryan, maybe Rory O'Connor, and that the sense that there might be an opportunity for him to do something here. And I do believe, like, how many teams in Wexford have come to Kilkenny, pulled it up to Kilkenny for 50, 55 minutes and kind of fallen away? Like, if that game went on and on, there was only going to be one winner. Wexford believed that they were going to win it. There was authority to their play. They reacted to the crowd. I just felt that this was a kind of a drawn in the line, a drawn in the sand performance by Wexford. It was just not today. They weren't losing to Kilkenny. They wanted to make third at a very minimum here. So I do think it could be the springboard that they could have a real cut off someone now, and they're dangerous opponents. Like, if Leach in there now, he's speaking about peak and performance and all that. He was probably injured earlier in the year. He looks buoyant, he looks fresh, he looks game, like, and they've probably landed on their best team now, and they're going to be a serious proposition for anyone.
Yeah, Dar Egan was very exercised on the sideline, John. You could see what it meant from it, and it was just pressure, because this isn't how he saw his first season going. But, like, he can take a lot of credit, the team he picked, but also 3 points from the bench, including Hurling's equivalent of Ronaldinho from Mikey Dwyer there, to basically run the length of the field, do a 360 in midfield, lose to Kilkenny man, and put the ball over while falling over. It was I was saying to somebody on Twitter, it was unavoidable. I had to travel while the match was on, so I was watching it on the Wexford Dublin train. And we're coming into Rathdrum, which is a beautiful part of the world, but there's mountains on either side of you. And fair play to the Irish Rail Wi-Fi. It stood up, it kept going, the stream continued, it was fine, but it did go a bit blurry for that Mikey Dwyer point. So I wasn't actually sure if he did what he actually did, or if it was something to do with the Wi-Fi connection, because it was just an astonishing point.
We saw some great solos at the weekend. Dwyer's obviously, and then Darragh Fitzgibbons for the goal yesterday. It was huge. But Egan talked a big game during the week. We caught an interview he did on Facebook, and he was very bullish about things, Mikey. A bit surprising, I thought, considering they were coming off that draw against Westmeath. But and again, let's be honest. When TJ struck that ball like he did, we thought it was Ballyhale Shamrocks all over again. Doing what they do best. But he has players back. Having the likes of Rec, having the likes of Chin back fully fit. Rory O'Connor is probably the most fouled player in the country. I think that will be statistically proven sooner or later anyway, by the likes of Barry Cleary from Wexford, obviously.
By his bruises.
Exactly. But very impressive. I thought I didn't give them a chance. I really didn't. I thought Kilkenny coming off that game found something. Clearly they haven't, and I think it's exposed something about Kilkenny. But Wexford would have a lot of muscle memory about beating this Kilkenny team, but to do it in Nowlan Park now is certainly huge and gives them a right fillip. And it's very much like Cork. Like, I know Kieran Kingston was giving out that they want the momentum to keep going, but this 3-week break, I think it comes at a lovely time for Wexford. Lee Chin can get himself even right. Like, clearly he's still not fully fit, but what he's able to produce, what he's been man of the match twice. Like the man has to be credited with a hell of a lot. But that was the thing that Egan said last week. If we get past this game, we're going to have a major say, and we're going to be a dangerous animal. Dangerous animal is what the expression he used, and I think they will be, Mikey. I don't, very much like Cork. I don't think many teams will want to play them.
Yeah, Rory, our friends down in Munster will look at that scoreline 122-118. They might sneer a little bit. It's a little bit low, but I look at it and see Wexford held Kilkenny to 118 in Nowlan Park, which is some going, and Liam Ryan and Damien Reck were a huge part of that, along with Paddy Foley. Like they're just kind of the three totems of that defence. And they showed it in every which way, winning high balls against the likes of TJ, but also there was some fantastic last-ditch defending as well. So
this is it. So the scoreboard, I think, to a certain extent, gives a false impression. I mean, some of the saves by Scruff and Mark Fanning, and that last-ditch block by Reck. I mean, it was. It was a proper. Were you in at it, Jackie? Did you go in? Yeah. Like, what was the atmosphere like in there? I'd say it was brilliant. Was it?
Well, the town itself, Rory, was. I will say Wexford are a great supporter.
They're great. They're great crack. Yeah.
The best part about Damien Reck's block was, right, and I love this piece. He just makes an unbelievable block from TJ Reid to save a certain goal.
Gets up to pick the ball up.
No, he was on his knees and he rises the ball in the square.
Little roll left.
As if he's on a beach in the Bahamas. I'll just raise up this ball here now and I'll just go to the side here and we'll see what happens. Why? What? That's coolness personified. I remember just looking at that goal going, that takes Lee Rory.
Yeah,
that takes you have TJ Reid and Billy Ryan lurking around there. He's just made a save, but you know what? I'm not going to even stand up. I'll just get on my knees here and I'll rise up.
Well,
I'm sure the signal in Rathdrum was fairly shaky around that
time. Jackie, a word on Kilkenny, because as you said, now this is uncharted territory going into a Leinster final against Galway. Henry Shefflin's Galway, off the back of two defeats. This is not what Brian Cody would expect, and you can probably testify to what training is going to be like now for the next couple of weeks in Nowlan Park. I'd say it'll be fairly hot and heavy, and that whistle that he supposedly swallowed will probably just be left in the car, I'd say.
Yeah, I thought it was a very disappointing performance from Kilkenny on a number of fold. I thought, we were in Nowlan Park, we're very proud of it, but I thought Wexford outworked us. I thought they were in our face. I thought they turned us up. I thought they won actual physical battle encounters. They put more pressure on us. And when the pressure was applied to Kilkenny, we went back to our old failings again of how many long, aimless balls did we hit down the throat of the Wexford defence. And you're looking at the defence was Matthew Hanlon, Paddy Foley and Liam Ryan, three outstanding lads in the air. Like Matthew Hanlon was excellent on TJ again. And I just thought we played into him. And from then, they got bodies back around that. They won the rucks, and then they had the runners coming off the shoulder, and they were able to pop the ball into Chin and Rory O'Connor. And I just thought, like, we have Pádraig Welsh came on in the 67th minute.
67th minute.
I just I actually thought he was injured because he wasn't on. I was like, right, Brian is after dropping him. And then I was like, because the pressure was coming on the second half, I said, we're going to see Pádraig. Then I said, he must be injured. He must have done something in the morning. Next thing, 67 minutes, I look and he's coming down. I was like, what's that all about? It was so strange. And that is, I said,
will Hugh Lawler be fit for the Leinster final, Jackie?
I don't know if he will, Rory. I don't know. And that's a concerning thing from Kilkenny is that Walter and Pádraig are so pivotal. It was on a half hour line, and they're not really firing for us at the minute. So we're probably going into the Leinster final, never been so uncertain of where we are, of our best team, of what midfield looks like. Like midfield half hour line is like a revolving door with lads coming in now. Like Wally was in, he was dropped, then he started and he wasn't. Then to Pádraig was dropped. Alan Murphy got taken off again. We're just seeing uncertain, especially from 8 to 15. And like Owen Cody was poor the weekend. In fairness, you have to give Damien Reck huge credit again. But like you would have to say Galway are favourites. Like we've just, as I just say, any test that can really add us in Leinster. We hadn't the answers.
What do you make of Adrian Mullen at midfield, Jackie?
I thought he was good, but I would have expected more from him. I just feel like we're not certain of who we have there. And Adrian Mullen is not a natural midfielder. And I know the game is fluid in around there, but sometimes I just don't think he's physical enough. Sometimes you just need a bruiser in there, a dirty hurler that'll just, like you think of the role that Conor Foley did for Kilkenny for years. You know, he just did the simple things. There was a leg in, there was an arse in, he'd win a ball, he'd throw it out and off he'd go. We're just missing someone like that at that minute. And Conor hasn't really played a whole lot, so I don't know what the story is there either, you know. So we're lovely hurlers in around that part of the world. We're athletic, but I just would like what we would love for a William O'Donoghue right now. a guy that in there that just set the tone.
Mick Fenley, like a kind of
Mick
a
Fenley,
Mick
Derek
Fenley
Lane,
type,
that type of an abrasive midfielder. And at the minute we're just chopping and changing. Like I'd say since the start of the league, there could be 8 or 9 lads that have had a go at midfield. You think of Connor Brown, you think Adrian Mullen, James Marr, Alan Murphy, Mikey Carey to go out there, Paddy Deegan, Keane Kenny. It's just been, and no one has landed on that spot yet.
And Mikey, the prize for winning Leinster is massive. Huge. Because not only are you into the last 4 and you have safe passage into a Leinster final, obviously, and like you'll have a couple of weeks then to get bodies rested and ready for that, but you avoid Cork in a quarter final. And trust me, if I was Galway or Kilkenny, I'd be wanting to do that big time.
Jackie, is there any chance of now that the under 20s, and those boys are big, like they looked a lot bigger yesterday in person than watching them on TV. Is there any chance that Brian could throw a curveball and bring one of them in? I know they're young, don't get me wrong.
This lad Drennan was unreal again, wasn't he?
Billy was excellent again, and he's a real Cody type of player. He's a serious paw on him, and he's able to score and won't stay in the corner. He'll come out and he'll mix and he'll look for the ball. I find it very hard, John. It's a fair question considering how poor Kilkenny have been. We need a kind of a lightning rod to get us going. If it was any, it would be Billy Drennan, but I just think the gap is so big. Like if you look at traditionally, Brian he's only ever brought someone of that young. Yeah, he brought Walter Welsh in from nowhere, but like Wally was probably he was. So
you're nearly going back to Chaffitz, are you?
Chaffitz. Even a Tommy had to serve a year or two. JJ did. He came over, but he did a whole year. I just don't see it. You think of it now, you'd probably,
and that was under 21.
Yeah, that was under 20. Yeah. So I just think the gap is too big. And a lot of those 20s haven't been in a senior environment. They haven't been up again a Mikey Butler or training again a Tommy Welsh. I just think it'd be too much for them.
I found it fascinating. Sorry, Mikey. That there was only, and Jackie can correct me if I'm wrong, but on the Kilkenny panel yesterday there was only 2 City men. Dixborough, well, if you include Dixborough City, but that I found that interesting. That spread, like Wine Gap had 2 players and things like that.
Yeah, Brian has probably gone to, we say, probably lesser known clubs and you probably look at the under 20, the Borough had 4 or 5 on that, James Stephens, we had none on it as well. So yeah, it's probably a change of a guard, and the Ballyhale have obviously a big contingent of it as well. But it just, at the minute, I suppose Kilkenny are using probably the same pool in 17, 18. Like we haven't seen Conor Fogarty, we haven't seen Richie Hogan, we haven't seen much of David Blanchfield, who I found was our best a player throughout the league. So it's kind of like there's 18, 19 lads there, you throw them all up and one week it's John Donnelly, next week it's Wally and that, so I don't know how much Brian has trust in us when you go from after 19, 20, because we just haven't seen him so far this year.
A word on Galway then, John, kind of serene enough, they had that draw with Wexford, which was peculiar circumstances. So they had that draw, and then they've just gone about their business. 4 wins from 4. Made hard work of it against Kilkenny in the end, but nobody I'd say would argue they weren't the right winners. And then they very, very professional performance against Dublin the last day. Just no mess, no fuss. It's kind of what we expect from Limerick, but maybe it's because they're playing in the unfashionable province. We're not talking about them.
Well, the slagging continues. They've done exactly what they were supposed to do. Aside from that Wexford result, which you could argue that was slightly unfair on them, but no, Henry's got plenty out of him, which surprised me in many ways. How quickly Conor Whelan came back. I did not expect him to see him until a Leinster final or a preliminary quarter final. I still felt. I thought that was almost a season-defining situation, but I think David Burke picked up an injury now, and that will be a little bit of a concern. But Ronan Glennon, who was one of the stars of the league for them, is coming back. He's been on the bench the last 2 times. They've done very nicely, but again, I would still have a little bit of a concern for them around that middle third. I think, at the back, Fintan Burke is a beautiful hurler. I still think they're a little bit creaky around the middle. That would be my concern for them. And let's be honest, lads, you're talking about 5,000 or 6,000 being put on the crowd for not what goes on in the field in Croke Park next Saturday, but on the sideline. Like, you know, they talk about the David Clifford effect when he was a minor player. The Cody Shefflin effect is the Leinster Council are going to be rubbing their hands with this one.
Yeah,
When do you think you'll be at it, John?
I think you talk about 30,000, 35,000, Jackie.
Yeah.
Antrim will bring a crowd. Kerry won't bring many.
No,
Antrim
the timing of the evening game mightn't suit Galway a huge deal, but I think to bring the Bob O'Keefe over the Shannon, I know it wasn't a huge thing for Joe Canning. He said that recently, but in this situation, I think it is big. Especially
I'd say they get the cows milked early that morning. They'll be in Croker for 7, John. I'd say,
get the Supermax on the way up the road.
And the way home. You have to get it both ways. You can't get back in. Rory, have you got a special Steadicam planned, or like we should take over the RTE News channel and just make it manager watch for the afternoon?
It was very funny, actually. I was watching the interview that poor Anthony Nash, I'd say the microphone was actually shaking in his hand, when he asked, look, you're going in, you're facing Galway now, and obviously Henry's the manager, or the Kilkenny man over him, and his line was just classic Brian Cody: we're playing Galway and that's it.
Yeah, Anthony Nash now is a man who charged down penalties for fun there for a decade, so probably slightly less terrifying than asking Brian Cody that question, but still.
I know, but I thought we were going to have another Marty Morrissey moment where someone was going to have to peel him up off the floor, but no, it was. Look, I think it is going to add to the narrative, and it's something that us in the media love to. You love those kinds of things to cling to and to latch onto. Yeah, and it'll probably add to a little bit of the pageantry around it. There won't be any handshakes beforehand. There might be one afterwards. Look, I don't know if it's that big a deal. Ultimately, I think what's going to dominate the news agenda in the post is if Kilkenny are beaten again. I mean, if they have 3 defeats and they're heading into the qualifiers, I'd say would that be a first time ever, John? I don't know. But look, I think that will be the big worry from a Kilkenny perspective. And it's a good opportunity for Galway now as well. I think Croke Park might suit them. Jackie mentioned, that there's a lot of chopping and changing. The big thing for me with Kilkenny, and we've kind of said this all along, is like I just don't think there's any pace in the team at all. They just don't have that. And I think at the modern intercounty game now is dominated by speedsters by and large. You do have to have it somewhere sprinkled in there. And I think they lack a small bit of that. They still have all the craft and the sticks men in the world. They'll always have that. But you just need, athletically, I just think they've come back a wee bit.
Yeah, Henry's success, we can't really call it success just yet, Jackie. I don't think Henry Shefflin counts the season as success unless he has a pot at the end of it. But how have you assessed how he's gone so far? And are you in any way surprised kind of at how he's kind of hit the ground running?
I suppose he's been gone about his business very quietly, very consistently. Yeah. I wouldn't say, if looking in from the outside, he's changed a lot, and I'd say if you're inside, I'd say he's changed an awful lot. You look there, like Dahi Burke is still 3, McInerney is 6. They probably brought Joseph Cooney maybe more to midfield as a role. He likes big men down the middle, so he does, and to build his team around that. So he's made some subtle changes.
Connor Whelan at 14.
Connor Whelan at 14.
There's a real good spine there, isn't there?
So I would say he's definitely demanding more of their inside forwards, getting out and working and getting involved and chasing lads back and turning people over and getting more bodies behind the ball, and definitely probably more of a heads up hurling, with a focal point being that Conor Whelan in attack. So that's kind of his brand of hurling. That's probably shaped in a lot of way by the way Brian did it, the way he did it with Ballyhale. But I'd say it's more behind the scenes. It's the talking to Conor Whelans. It's the role of Cottle Mannion, and he's. I looked at the Galway thing when he did take it over, as he had a few big calls. Does he go with the I'm not going to say older, but the guys of the 17 team? Does he go with all them again and try nurture them and try sprinkle some new guys in, or does he try and freshen it up completely? He's gone with those guys again. And they've rewarded him so far, but I suppose Tom Monaghan has been a huge coup for them. Fintan Burke, so he's put a few little nice lovely players in around, we said, more experienced guys. He seems to be getting a bit of a kick out David Burke again. Now he might be injured for the Leinster final, but he's done it in a really low fashion piece. And even the whole handshake thing, there hasn't been anything from Henry from that. That has, although it was big news at the time, it's just slipped away there. And the Leinster final coming and go, and Henry won't. Whether they win, lose or draw, that'll just be the way it is. That's the way he goes about his business.
When we work on the nighttime program, Mikey, look, Jackie will know this, you're sat there watching games with the lads, particularly during the daytime there as the games are coming in, and you're just doing your bits and bobs, getting ready analysis wise for later that evening. And Henry was a fascinating fella to sit and watch a match with, because Jackie will know this better than anyone, having shared a dressing room with him probably for 15 years, but his reading of a game and the things that he will spot is extraordinary. Like, you're sitting there watching a game of hurling, in layman's terms, like pretty dopey, really, I suppose. But he'll see something and you'll go, Jesus, I didn't see that now at all. And I think that kind of vision that he has, I think probably obviously comes from his strength as a player as well, given how good he was, the greatest and all of that. But I think that sort of insight, I'd say he'd be magic in a one-on-one in terms of improving a lad on an individual basis, in terms of individual man management, and in terms of getting an extra 5% out of each player, in terms, and I'd say when you add all of that up into a collective, I think it makes for a potent mix. And Galway are a major force to be reckoned with in this championship.
Yeah, and as I think most of us probably thought they were after that league match down in Limerick, when maybe we cheapened that result a little bit with how Limerick went after that. But as we said here last week, I think Limerick targeted that game and it was a proper match, and we kind of saw what Galway were made of there. Finally, John, just a word. Congratulations, first of all, to Kildare, Tyrone and Louth on their Christy Ring, Nicky Rackard and Laurie Maher wins. Challenge Cup opponents kind of mention those competitions and say, this is what we're headed for. Are the GAA happy with those lower division competitions? Do they serve a purpose? They're never going to be headline makers, let's be honest. You're talking about the third, fourth and fifth tier of intercounty hurling, but do they serve a purpose in terms of development of the GAA, I think?
Well, there's a lot of yo-yoing, and I know from predictions how competitive it is, Mikey, because they've made me look like an idiot. you look at the round robin and you look at that for the form guide, but it gives you nothing. Like, you look at the McDonough, Kerry losing to Down first day out, and you thought, Jesus, Down are on their way. But in the lower leagues, Tyrone have had a great year, hurling as well as under 20. Whatever happens to their footballers now, they've had a fine year. But there's a lot of yo-yoing. Cavan obviously had a team there a couple of years ago. They've gone down a little bit. They hadn't had a team for a while before, and it does serve a purpose. I think it's run off a bit too quickly. I would like to see it, if it was played on, I know Croke Park is a huge thing, but if it was played on the undercard of a prominent game like the Leinster final, obviously the McDonald final is the curtain raiser for that. But if they were part, even in Thurles, they were put on curtain raisers, I think it would give it even more of a bidding. It was a huge thing for Kildare. There's no denying that, and Kildare are moving in the right place. But the step up next year, they'll be concerned about that. They will be. I just think it's run off a bit too quickly. If it was spread out another 1 or 2 weeks, like the argument will always, I know the argument was made on the Sunday game yesterday that, the championship feels a little bit too quickly at the moment. I think we will see an August finish to it next year. But in terms of the lower tiers, yeah, it's going the right way. But
is there too many tiers, John? Like, for instance, is there much of a difference between the standard at Nicky Rackard to Laurie Maher, and do they actually? Would that particular level be better served by amalgamating that into one tier, give them more games? I'm just wondering, is there like 5 tiers? Is that overdoing it?
It's a fair point, Rory, but there are a few whipping boys there, and that is the concern for them. I think the GAA are going to leave well enough alone, and that the hurling league definitely is something on the agenda for them. But that's for something next year, if not the year after.
Yeah, your old mucker David Herity there, Jackie, it's doing a great job with Kildare, and there seems to be a bit of momentum behind Kildare hurling at the moment, which I guess as your northerly neighbours, you're happy enough to see, as long as they don't make it into the Leinster Championship anytime soon.
Jackie, just like David Herity, Derek Ling, Henry Shefflin, there's loads of great Kilkenny managers out there, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. Right? Eddie was doing a bit as well. Yeah,
Eddie doing a bit.
Plenty of lads. learning their trade and have served their apprentices and all. So,
Mick Fennelly,
yeah,
you forgot?
Mick
Fennelly as
Fennelly.
well, yeah. So sure, Mick Kavanagh is with Mick Fennelly as well also. So they've all dipped their toe into the management or in some capacity as well. Nolan Larkin is doing a bit with the Wicklow Hurlers as well. So plenty of bodies knocking around Kilkenny, Rory. No fear of that.
Yeah.
All right, lads. Look, that was a good chat, and we managed to fit in a bit of football at the front and Jack at the start, and Jackie didn't run away. So successful podcast all around. Thanks to the three of you, and we'll be back on Thursday to preview the weekend's action. Good luck. Talk to you then.
Crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. He hits it. It's over the bar. Oh, holy Moses.